Oh, this municipal planning committee, their commission meeting to order. And agenda additions, we have 7.3.
6.6.
6.6, sorry. 6.6. Everybody was emailed that addition out. Is there anything else that is new and exciting? Okay, seeing none, I'll get a motion.
I'll give you the motion to approve the agenda with the addition.
Awesome. Okay, all those in favor? Minutes from April 26, 2023. Any questions, concerns? Mr. McKay, do you have any? None? You'd like to move those? Awesome. Seeing no questions, concerns, all those in favor? That's carried. Okay, business arising from said minutes, nothing. We will go into, actually what we'll do is quick introductions. How's that? We're going to go and we'll start with Mr. Fitzgerald.
Rich Fitzgerald, Development Officer.
Michelle Hoover, Legislative Assistant.
Ernie Gender, Board Member. Paul McKay, Board Member.
Larry Clark, Board Member. Dave Grover.
Justin Stevens, good afternoon.
Wes Stulberg, Board Member.
James Nyberg, Chair MPC.
Craig Teal, Director of Planning and Development.
Andrew Burchett, Director of Municipal Services.
In the back.
Rick Jackson, Planning and Development.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. And now online, we have, who do we have, Andrew?
We've got the applicants from 6.3 and 6.6. That's correct, Rich?
Okay, 6.3. So as the board, are you okay with going to 6.3 in our agenda? I see nodding of the head, so let's move to page 17 of your package. And who's taking this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of the development of this report is to consider a discretionary use development permit application for an RV to be used as a dwelling unit on a parcel less than 80 acres, and also with a variance to allow for a second RV to be used as a dwelling unit on the same parcel. The subject property is located on the northwest of 74020, west of the 4th, at the corner of Highway 835 and Township Road 40-2. The property is zoned agricultural and is 5.8 acres in size. During site inspections last fall, planning staff noted that 2 RVs were present on the property and appeared to be in use. Planning staff spoke to the landowner, who indicated that he and his family were using the lot for camping on the weekends. Planning staff advised the landowner that a development permit was required to continue using the RVs on the property. The permit was submitted in early spring, but it did not contain the required information about how the wastewater would be handled. Planning staff advised the applicant at that time that the RVs would be required to be connected to a certified wastewater system, and their site plan needed to indicate what type of system was going to be used and where on the property it would be located. No contact was received from the applicant for several weeks. Planning staff then became aware that earthworks were taking place on the property. The landowner was subsequently contacted at that time and advised a stop order may be issued for the property if the landowner continued to develop the lot without the benefit of a permit. The applicant then submitted his application with a site plan identifying that a holding tank was going to be located on the northeast of the property. A site inspection was performed on the site, and it was noted that both RV's wastewater pipes were connected to underground pipe. When asked about this, the applicant indicated that he had installed a holding tank himself and was unable to provide the certification for the system. Planning staff also noted that no access port was visible in which to be able to empty the holding tank. It was also noted that a large area had been disturbed and had topsoil placed, which the applicant indicated was going to be a garden site. Planning staff informed the applicant that a roadside development permit through Alberta Transportation would be required as the subject property is within 300 meters of a provincial highway. The applicant has applied to Alberta Transportation for the permit, but at the time of writing this report, the permit has not been granted. The application was referred out to staff. I didn't get any comments or concerns back, other than I had a few questions about the penalty for starting a development without the benefit of a permit. Unfortunately, because we had spoke with this applicant prior to that rule being in place, I didn't feel it was pertinent to add that to this application. So the subject parcel is zoned agricultural. The RV is a dwelling unit on a parcel under 80 acres is a discretionary use in this district. However, because there are 2 RVs proposed to be used on the lot, our land use bylaw states that only 1 RV may be used as a dwelling unit pursuant to section 75.3, except in Buffalo Lake Meadows. So therefore, the application is going to need a variance to be able to use that second RV. So the site inspection, you see the photos where the area has been disturbed, topsoil hauled in, and the 2 RVs that are connected to the underground pipe. The recommendation, staff recommendation is that we approve the discretionary permit and allow an RVs, and issue the variance to allow for the additional RV to be used as a dwelling unit, subject to the following conditions. And the standard conditions, but the big one that stands out is they have to be connected to a certified wastewater system. What that means is you have to be licensed to install a holding tank or a septic system. Being a licensed plumber doesn't give you a license to do that. It's 2 separate. Just because you're a licensed plumber doesn't mean you're licensed to install the systems. So I think because Mr. Charlie is a licensed plumber, he's indicated that as well with conversations that we've had, but that doesn't give the certification that we need to know that this is an approved system that's been installed.
And where do you get the certification?
Well, there's several people in town that do them. Action Plumbing is certified to do them. Anyone
can do an inspection and get this done.
Generally, the inspection has to be done prior to it being installed. You can't go in after the fact because everything's buried, right? So they don't know.
What's under the ground.
Right. So,
Okay. Mr. Stevens.
I have a question through the staff. Is there any issues? I noticed that there's no pictures of the approach. Is there any issues with the approach that's installed or its
so
distance from the highway?
So that approach was installed and approved by the county back when that parcel was subdivided. So that's why I didn't make mention of it in the development permit. It's already been signed off of.
It's already been approved.
So when we're doing this, the second RV is quite a variance. Or where does the Lake District end in this situation? Where do we say that we are no longer part of the lake and we are now part of outside of that lake area? Because we get a lot of grief, but that's where our biggest grief is. Where does that end? Is there a spot?
So outside of that, like the Buffalo IDP area?
Yeah. Are we just on the outside edge of that?
We're probably a mile, I think, or half a mile away.
I think there's a couple things. We're within the Buffalo Lake IDP area, but we're outside the designated growth node.
Okay.
From the limited development area, which by and large means our agricultural district should prevail.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, go ahead.
I just have a question on the fact of that sewage system too, with no manway or anything visible to be able to offload it. Yeah, you do need to do an inspection prior to tying into that, because where do those where do the pipes go? Nobody knows that. It's $1 million question.
So, Mr. Chaley or Mrs. Chaley, I'm not sure who's online. We do have a comment.
Sorry, my phone disconnected for a couple minutes, so I'm not entirely sure what we're talking about at this exact moment.
Okay, so we're deciding whether we're making a decision on your permit here. Now, there was some concerns about the sewer that was brought up and the second RV. So would you like to make comment on either of those?
Yes, at the time, I did not know I needed a permit for the holding tank. So I installed one. As soon as I will be getting an inspection, or if required, a certified installer to install a proper one. At that time, again, I wasn't aware that it was required for a simple holding tank. I knew a full septic would require a full installer, but I was misunderstood.
Okay. And
Uh,
go ahead.
and what was the question about the RV?
Well, typically, the second RV is not a, that is a non-discretionary use, so we would have to have a variance on it. So,
Yep.
you need both RVs, is that what you're saying?
Yes. So the property is owned between myself and my in-law. And one RV is for my family and one is for them.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Gender.
I understand, I feel like with these septic tanks that they've got a nameplate stamped in the top of them where it is actually in the concrete engraved into a plate. So on something like that, I believe that has to be visually inspected by an inspector. I'm just kind of wondering, okay, this could be something that you may be up against.
Yes, I'm aware I will probably have to have it dug up and probably replaced because I don't believe I used an approved tank.
Okay. Fair enough. Go ahead, Mr. Stover.
And I was just wondering, this arrangement of using recreation vehicles as permanent living, how long of a timeline are you looking at doing this? Is there a future to build a home there, or is it just going to be a recreation vehicle?
It was purchased to be used as essentially a campground for our family.
Go ahead.
I have a question about whether this has any potential of full-time year-round use, or is it just a seasonal recreational program?
It is purely seasonal. Once the ground freezes, we're off.
Mr. Clark, go ahead.
Just a question, when I hear campground, is it expected to expand more than 2 RVs throughout periods of the summer?
Occasionally, we might have my parents or my brother-in-law come out, but it'll be for one weekend here or there. It won't be a permanent thing.
So, Mr. Kelly, you understand we've had some issue with campgrounds in our area. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the ongoings of the county of Stettler, but we've had a serious, I guess, as you could say, backlash about putting them in. So we're a little bit leery of setting even a 2 RV campground up. I'm not sure where the board is on this. What is everybody's thought? I don't have a motion yet to approve this, so I'm seeing where we're going. Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to approve this as presented, then that doesn't necessarily open up the door to more RVs, because that would be an additional permit, correct?
Okay.
So we could, in theory, allow what's there without opening up the floodgates, so to speak.
Okay. Mr. Grover?
And that's with, yeah, and he said he was gonna fix the sewer anyhow, so.
Okay.
I'll make the motion that we approve with staff recommendations, including the necessary inspections.
Mr. Clark, now we have a motion. That's good.
Yeah, just a question on the sewer system, how much time is allowed, or is it allowed for occupancy until the sewage system is up to code?
Well, I think we don't have a permit issued. What we have is a decision on a permit. So that decision on the permit will have to meet all the conditions, one of them being the septic tank, and the second getting Alberta Transportation's approval. So till that time, you're not supposed to be there camping.
Night occupancy is not supposed to be there.
Because you don't have a permit, right? By our rules, am I correct on that?
Yes, it tends, this particular case, we already have the 2 RVs on site, and it tends to be an area where people can take a risk, which at some future date, we'll probably talk more about how we're managing that system. If you're concerned about occupancy and the use starting prior to one of the conditions having been met, my suggestion to the panel would be to look at the wording of the condition and make that very clear. So for instance, if you want to see condition number 6, indicating that we need a copy of the permit from the Safety Codes Council, indicating that they have an approved private sewage system in place. That must occur prior to use of the recreational vehicles would be one way to word it. Or your alternative could be saying we want it within before X date, and also say no use until that's taken care of. So there are a couple options on how you can manage that condition.
Mr. Clark?
Yes, I would suggest that, or put forward that is how it's written up.
Okay, so the condition would change to read that the condition number 6, or is that one we're talking about?
Yes.
Number 6, that no site occupancy is to take place until that certificate has, or that condition has been met to the county satisfaction, thank you.
If the board's willing to, if we get the general gist, maybe staff, we can.
Okay.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Okay, and what about the Alberta Transportation approval?
We can add that in as a condition that, we have to give the copy of the permit from Alberta Transportation to add it to the file.
Okay, fair enough.
Probably the same thing, before occupancy or whenever. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, do you understand that that's the 2 items that the board is quite concerned about that you get dealt with right away?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so basically no camping there until you get them in place, and you have a decision on a permit if we pass it here, not a permit. Until the actual conditions are fully met, then the permit is issued. So just to be clear, after this vote, you do not have a permit, you have a permit that has conditions that need to be met. Okay? A decision on it. Okay? So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor and all those opposed. You have 2 opposed, myself and Mr. Stover. Okay? Okay, so there you have it. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Next one. 6.6. Oh, 6.6, yeah. And the board again is okay with moving to 6.6 out of our agenda? Okay, who's taking this one? Rich again?
Yeah, it'll take me a second here. Sorry, I forgot that we had an addition.
And this is not in the package, right? Okay, so it's our paper copy, gentlemen, that you're going to be looking at?
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this application is to consider a discretionary use development permit application for a standalone solar panel within a multi-lot subdivision. The subject property is located on Lot 9, Block 1, Plan 042-0460 in the Jewel Estate subdivision. The lot is 5.87 acres in size. The applicant is proposing to install a solar panel array for residential use. The array will be 14 to 16 feet above grade. The property has a large municipal reserve to the south, agricultural land to the east, and other residential properties to the north and west. There is a wetland that runs along the south of the property that is an environmental reserve lot. The lot is mostly flat with a mixture of trees along the property lines that block some of the property from view. The approach has good sight lines in both directions. The subject property is outside of the boundary of any IDP boundaries. It's zoned as country residence agricultural and a standalone solar panel is a discretionary use in this district if the property is located within a hamlet or multi-lot subdivision. If it was outside of either of those, it would have been a permitted use. The proposed development exceeds the minimum setback requirements of the district and also meets the setback from the wetland. The location of the solar array is not expected to produce any glare issues for neighboring properties. You can see from the site inspection, that's the location they're proposing to build it. See the wetland off to the side there. So, in the opinion of the Development Authority, the proposed use of a standalone solar panel is discretionary use due to the subject property being located within the multi-lot subdivision. The proposed development meets all the required setbacks of the district. The proposed solar will be mounted on concrete piles 14 to 16 feet above grade level and meets the definition of a standalone solar panel. Therefore, the Development Authority approved the discretionary use development permit for a standalone solar panel on Lot 9, Block 1, Plan 0420460, subject to the following conditions. Your standard conditions just speaks to about removing vegetation around the wetland and whatnot, but and I'll just say for this one, if this would have been on the other side of this property, I would have been more concerned about glare and issues with other neighbors. But the property adjacent to this is a municipal. It will never be developed, and it's far enough away from it. It really shouldn't cause any issues.
Okay, Mr. Clark?
Just a question on that. It does say 14 to 16 feet above grade. Is that overall to the top of the panel, or is that to where the bottom? Yeah.
No, that would be the top of the panel. From my understanding, maybe Mr. Deaver could confirm that, but to me, that's the top point of the panel would be 14 to 16 feet.
Mr. Gender?
I'll move that has been presented, but I've also got some questions.
Okay, I noticed you were looking at me, so you'll move it, but go ahead now. That's the way we should do it.
I'm just kind of wondering, okay, on this one, is there a certain amount of area that can only be covered by structures?
In that district, I'm not sure if we have a maximum lot coverage, but it's almost a 6-acre parcel that he has. So what he's proposing, it wouldn't take up much area on that parcel.
It'd be kind of nice to know whether it's going to cover an acre, 2 acres, 3, any multiples thereof.
So the total size, I think on his site plan, he identified it in there, and again, David could probably speak to this, but it identifies it as it's smaller than his septic field, just to put it in reference.
Mr. Deaver, I'll just go to you. Do you have any comment right now? Can you give us a little bit of idea how much dirt you're going to cover?
The overall footprint, I'm being told, is 14 feet wide by 50 feet long by 14 feet high.
Okay, there you go. So Mr. Gender, does that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
2 questions. Is that the wetland just to the southeast corner of the array?
No,
Area? Or is that?
directly south, it's a little creek that runs through there. That's the wetland. I think that's his garden to the east.
Oh, that's part of the same applicants?
Yeah.
Okay. And is there any issues with the proximity between the solar array and the existing septic field, or is?
I don't believe so. He's mounting it on cement pylons. So it looks fair. I mean, as long as it's not going into the field and affect the piping. So
That's his problem anyways.
it would be definitely in his best interest to make sure that's
Mr. Deaver, do you have any other comments? Heavy on the mister?
I do not.
All right. Mr. Gender?
I was just kind of wondering on, okay, we've heard that other solar stations, that they have to rearrange, they have to strip the topsoil on whatever is going to be taken. Is something like this, does it have to be done on this one?
So I do have a little bit of knowledge on that. They'll drill the holes down or drive the piles, however they're gonna do it in this particular case. And then they just mount to the pipe on top. It's not near the commercial setup that you would see in any of the other ones.
Probably just sawmill tubes.
I just don't care to see a bunch of open ground and a bunch of longer.
No.
Thank you.
This is his backyard. I think he wants to keep it nice. Okay, any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And all those opposed? So Mr. Clark is opposed and Mr. Grover are opposed. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Beaver. And moving on, where are we going next? Gentlemen, should we go back to the development report? Or do you want to go? All right, let's start over again. We'll go back to 5.1, page 1 of your package. It's actually going to be page 3, I think, on your screen, so. Go ahead, Development Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just did a quick pie chart to show the year-to-date comparable to 2022. So in 2021, we did up to May 18th, 2022. We had processed a total of 39 permits, and so far in 2023, we've done 51 development permits. The big things that stand out, we've done double the amount of residential development permits this year than we did last year in the same time period. Commercial and industrial are almost identical between the 2 years. Ancillary use development permits are up a bit in 2023 over 22, but RVs and dwelling unit are almost identical, and variance applications are almost the same between the 2 years. So a little bit busier this year, much, quite happy to have Greg on board to take a bit of the weight off. It doesn't, the economy concerns don't seem to be slowing the developments down at all. And a lot of, like I say, residential new homes being built, additions being built onto the existing. So.
Excellent. Any questions, gentlemen? Go ahead, Mr. Stolber.
I'll move the development officer report.
Okay. All those in favor? That is carried. Excellent. Moving on then. 6.1, Mulligan Smith. Page, our paper copy is off compared to the other one, so it's page 5, I think. It's a little bit of a. Who's taking this one? All Rich, all day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may be familiar with this application. It's very similar to the bylaw amendment that we just did to allow for a personal service facility on this specific property in the Heartland Business Park. So the purpose of this application is to consider a discretionary use development permit for a personal service facility on Lot 1, Block 2, Plan 1420412. Subject property is located in the Heartland Business Park, and the property is occupied currently by a 19,000 square foot structure, which currently houses a convenience store and gas station and has open office space on the north side. County of Stettler land use bylaw was recently amended to add public service facility as a discretionary use on this specific property in the highway mixed use district. The applicant is proposing to operate a massage clinic in the unoccupied section of the building. There's a parking area designated for the occupants of the office space on the north side of the building, and the area is paved. The building has emergency exits with emergency lighting to meet fire regulations. The proposed business will have 2 employees and is not expected to generate more than 5 to 7 vehicles per day to the property. The subject property is within the boundaries of the town and county IDP, and this application was circulated with town staff and no issues or concerns were received. The proposed use of a massage clinic falls under the definition of a personal service facility and is a discretionary use on this subject property. The application was referred out to administration and concerns were received. Site inspection was performed. You can see the photos of the building, see the inside. It does have washroom facilities there. parking and it has its own entrance where customers will come and go from there. So the recommendation is that we approve the discretionary use development permit application for a personal service facility on Lot 1, Block 2, Plan 1420412, subject to the following conditions. And they're pretty standard conditions. Notable ones are if the applicant is proposing to do any signage, that becomes a separate development permit that she's going to have to apply for, and will also have to apply to Alberta Transportation. But she's not proposing to do any of that right now. Other than that, they're pretty standard conditions.
Just a question on signage. There is a tripod style sign in front of that building now, so would they have to apply for signage if they were affixing it to that?
If there's a permit for that one, you know, if there isn't, then yes, it would be required.
Mr. Gender.
I'll move it as presented, but I also have a question on there.
I figured you did. That's why I was looking at you.
You were. Can they just state that the town had no issues on it? I'm just kind of wondering, like, we have had some issues with the sewage up there, whether they pump it out at night, that sort of thing. You think that, my thought would be that the town would be possibly questioning how much sewage this would be also contributing into it.
It is our monkey in our circus a little bit, and we're dealing with it, but that's for them to make their decision, not for us. They had the opportunity. That's the issue. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just a little bit of background to answer that line of questioning. The sewage issues with the building have been two over history. One was a bit of freezing in the line, which the town did troubleshoot and remedy with the property owner. And the other was a freezing of a vent stack in the winter, which once pointed out was corrected. So we think we're past the issues around that particular property. So there shouldn't be there's always a possibility of further troubleshooting that any system needs maintenance, but I don't think it's a concern for capacity or ability to service.
Okay, thank you. That's your answer. Mr. Stevens, you have your hand? No, looks good. Okay. Then I have no other questions or concerns. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay. 6.2. And that is, I'm not sure what, page 12, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this application is to consider a variance application to the front yard setback for a dwelling and an ancillary building on Lot 1, Block 1, Plan 072-0433. The applicant is proposing to bring the subject property into compliance by applying for a 16% variance to the front yard setback for the dwelling. So from 125 feet down to 109, and a 38% variance for the ancillary building, 78 feet instead of the required 125 feet. The subject property is located adjacent to Highway 56 on the southeast of 1740-20, west of the 4th. The subject parcel was created by a subdivision in 2007, and at that time, access to the parcel was from an approach directly off of Highway 56. A condition of subdivision was that the undeveloped road allowance for Township Road 40-2 be constructed to county standard, and that access to the parcel was to be constructed off of that road allowance. By doing so, the front yard is now measured off of the Township Road and not Highway 56, and now buildings that were in compliance do not meet the required setbacks. The section of Township Road 40-2 that passes the subject property and ends almost directly in front of the property. There are several wetlands to the west in the road allowance, so future construction will be difficult to do. The County of Stettler currently has no intentions to expand this section of road. Subject property is outside of the boundary of any IDP. The application was referred out to administration and no concerns were received. The subject property is located in the agricultural district of the County of Stettler. Front yard setbacks in this district are calculated from the center line of the road where the property gains access to a county road. The minimum front yard setback is 125 feet. However, section 23.4 of the County of Stettler Land Use Bylaw states that the Municipal Planning Commission may allow a variance of any setback in order to correct an error or omission or other defect, or to address site-specific conditions, any of which, in the opinion of the Development Authority, do not cause unreasonable hardship and would not unduly interfere with with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use of, enjoyment, or value of adjacent land parcels. So site inspection was performed, and it's a photo of the house and the garage that don't meet the required setback. And then the third photo shows an overhead of the area, and you can see the township road dead ends right past this property here. So it's in the opinion of the Development Authority that the location of the dwelling and the ancillary building pose no issues with neighboring lands and do not interfere with the use or enjoyment of any adjacent parcels. The structures were constructed in compliance with the requirements at the time they were built, but as the parcel changed, they became non-compliant. Therefore, the Development Authority approves the variance of 16% of the dwelling's front yard setback and a 38% variance of the ancillary building's front yard setback with the following conditions. And pretty standard conditions, but one thing I want to point out is if the variance is granted, it grants only what is there today. If the applicant decides that they want to expand or build on, that becomes a whole other development permit application or variance application.
Mr. McKay.
I will move that we accept it with recommendations of the staff, so.
Okay, any questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. So just one question on that, as that property sells, will the new owners know what that is going forward? I mean, if this applicant was to sell their property and then the next guys come in and want to build, how does that work? Like,
So we'll issue if the variance is granted, we will issue the compliance certificate that has been requested. So that will go on the permanent land file. They'll get a copy as well.
oh,
So that the new owners.
yeah, just whoever owns it in the future, go forward. Okay, perfect. Going to 6.427.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this application is to consider a discretionary use development permit application for a manufactured home in the Hamlet Residential District on Lot 14, Block 4, Plan 4684 CL. The subject property is located in the Hamlet of Bymore and is zoned Hamlet Residential. The lot is currently occupied with a 1990 model manufactured home. The lot is serviced with municipal water and sewer services. The applicant is proposing to replace the existing manufactured home with a new 2023 model. The new dwelling will be connected to existing services and the existing approach will be used. The location of the new dwelling meets all the required setbacks of the Hamlet Residential District. The lot is flat with no visible obstructions to the proposed development. There is a hedge along the north and south of the property line that separate the neighboring properties from the subject property is located in the Hamlet Residential District. It does meet all the required setbacks. The application was referred out with no concerns or comments received. Yeah, so notable things, this manufactured home is about 15 or 16 feet shorter than the existing. So it will actually take up less space on the lot.
Do they consider this a tiny home? When do you become a tiny home? Because this doesn't look very big.
It's not a tiny home, but it is, I think it's called a park model.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Okay, Mr. Stover.
I'll make the motion to approve this as per the staff recommendation and say we're very pleased to get a new home in Bymore.
Figured you would be. Anybody have any questions or concerns with this? Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Excellent. 32-3.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep. All rich all day?
The purpose of this application is to consider permitted use, consider a discretionary use development permit, permitted use development permit for an ancillary building with a variance to the rear yard setback on Lot 9, Block 2, Plan 2120056. The subject property is located on the southeast boundary of the town of Stettler in the Anderson subdivision. The applicant recently consolidated two lots into one larger lot. The lot currently has a manufactured home and a shed occupying it. The proposed ancillary building will use the alleyway for access, and the automotive doors will open towards the alley. The applicant is proposing to construct the building on concrete piles. Subject property is zoned country residence small lot. Subject property currently has an 8-foot high fence that encompasses the property and blocks the view from adjacent properties. The property is flat with a slight downward grade towards the alley, which should allow for drainage. No new services are proposed for the improvements, and an existing access will be used from the alley. The subject property is within the town and county IDP and has been identified in that plan as residential use. The application was referred to town staff, and no objections or comments were received at the time of writing this report. Subject property is zoned country residence small lot, and an ancillary building, standard size residential, is a permitted use in this district. However, the rear yard setback is 20 feet due to the automotive doors opening in the direction of the alley, and the applicant is proposing to place the structure 8 feet from the rear boundary, and therefore requires a 60% variance to the rear yard setback. Section 23.4 of the land use bylaw states that the Municipal Planning Commission may allow a variance of any setback in order to correct errors or omissions or other, or to address site-specific conditions, any of which, in the opinion of the Development Authority, do not cause unreasonable hardship to neighboring properties. Site inspection photos, you can kind of see the fence in the backyard. The garage is going to go right where that tree is kind of laying. And those are the doors that swing out to the alley. You can see there. In the opinion of the Development Authority, the proposed use in ancillary building residential standard size is a permitted use in the country residence small lot district. The proposed location of the ancillary building will not interfere with the enjoyment or amenities of adjacent properties. Therefore, the Development Authority approves the ancillary building with a variance to the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 8 feet with the following conditions. Go through the standard conditions.
Very often that we get a survey's site plan like that, usually it's done on a piece of paper. This is pretty impressive. Mr. Gender, or where are you at on this?
I'll move it, but no questions.
Okay. And there's, what kind of doors are they gonna have?
They're,
One big door?
no, it's got two automotive doors that open into like up roll-up doors
Yeah,
in the garage.
And there's lots of room then to maneuver that in?
There is, I think what the setback change is for is that if you were to park a car in front of the garage, it's not going to be in the alley.
Fair enough, and you're not gonna park there. That's fair. Okay, any questions or concerns? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, subdivision, 7.1.
Mr. Chairman, I think probably yes.
Well done, Mitch.
Take a breather. So the first of two subdivision applications, and actually, if I can ask Andrew just to jump to the sketch on page 50 of the, sorry, 48 on the hard copy, so 46 in the digital. So I should bring up the sketch of the subdivision for us. So this application is located about a mile west of 835, south of Erskine, but still within the Big Valley ward. It's in an area where we have, probably fair to say, an incomplete overall county road network, which will come up in the course of the story we're about to hear. So the applicant for this particular quarter section you see up on the screen for the southeast 10 also owns a quarter section to the immediate east, which is the southwest of 11. And the proposal is to basically expand Lot A in the upper right corner by adding approximately 2 acres from the southeast 10. So what we're doing is we're subdividing about 2 acres from the balance for the quarter section, with the idea that it'll then be consolidated with about the 5 acres that's in Lot A to create about a 7 to 8 acre parcel at the end of the day for the purposes of a residential parcel. It is the second parcel out of the quarter section, so environmental reserve and municipal reserve dedications do have to be taken into account. In terms of environmental reserve, we are recommending that they be left in private ownership. In terms of municipal reserve, the policy of the county is to take 10% of the area being subdivided. So in this particular case, it would be based on the 2 acres that's coming out of the southeast 10, with an expectation that that'd be a cash in lieu as opposed to a land dedication, which we use a set value of $1,250 per acre, and the applicant has agreed to that calculation. So you'll see that it's one of the conditions. The parcel meets all the size requirements for the land use bylaw and the MDP. It's a little bit bigger than our preferred 5 acres, and that is in part due to the fact that there's a open discharge system for the neighboring house on the southwest 11 located on this property. But the applicant, when they build their new house, intends to use a new well and their own holding tank, or basically a pump out, sorry, not an open discharge, but a haul-away system as opposed to a field or an open discharge themselves. The proposed house location is kind of in out just to the west of the tree line and in more of the southwest corner of the particular of the parcel, the purple square that you can see up on the screen. So the interesting issues that come up is, well, one is the neighbor's open discharge that's across the undeveloped, partially developed county road allowance for 21-2. And we also have the water line serving the house that's over there. I'm not sure if you could blow up or zoom in on that particular, actually, if you go to page 49. Good, that's great. Okay, so you can see on this particular blow up, the house in question is the building kind of towards the middle of the screen. The corner of it just goes into Range Road 21-2's road allowance. If you move your direction north towards the shed, you will find just on the edge of the right of way the location of the pump out, and then the pump out goes to the open discharge, which is in the kind of the odd shaped clearing that you can see in the trees just to the west, roughly where Andrew's hand was pointing. The water line for the house comes from a water well that's located in the southeast 10 on the far north boundary. So there's a water line that cuts through here, largely following kind of the crescent shape through the trees just below the open discharge to get to the house. So we have a couple of things where, because the person owns several core sections, they put facilities to serve the house in the southwest 11 on land that they owned. And that's one of the things we probably have to address as part of the subdivision approval. If it's going to be sold even to a family member or someone else, the property that's being enlarged will come with a restriction to allow the continued use of the open discharge system and some sort of easement to allow the water line to continue to cross. It also raises the question, well, how did you get across the government road allowance? And it's been around for many, many years. And our general approach or recommendation from administration is to use a license to occupy, an agreement that allows those existing facilities to continue on. It's always subject to the caveat that if for some reason the county comes along and wishes to expand 21-2 to be kind of complete the grid and continue all the way to the south, those facilities may have to be relocated. And that takes us to the interesting access and travel routes in this particular part of the county. So you can see that 21-2, I would probably be generous in characterizing it as our lowest grade local road, maybe machinery road, maybe more apt. And once you turn east to go through the farmyard, literally, that's the direction of travel, you go through the applicant's yard in the southwest 11, you pick up what's more of a machinery road and even less developed portion before you continue south and get down to 37-0, I believe is the intersecting township road. So not an ideal situation, but because the application deals with southeast 11 or 10, we can't just go fix things in southeast 11 for road dedications or changes in that regard. In terms of the enlarged parcel, one of the things that we do need to account for is their ability to have legal and physical access. And they could access Range Road 21-2 at the very northeast corner of the parcel, but they have opted instead to access roughly almost immediately west of the existing house into that, I guess, crescent area that you can see where the trees are. That's the kind of clearing that shows in the other photos that they've tried to make. And what that means is they will have to extend Range Road 21-2 to that access point, and then a little bit past, approximately 20 meters, almost 22 meters length of a grader, to match the current standard of what's already constructed in Range Road 21-2. 21-2 has the same standard for about a mile further to the north. In the administration's perspective, it wouldn't be worth to upgrade it to a full-on 7 or a 8 to 9 meter road, but getting it upgraded or built to a 5.5 to 6 meter road, or lowest standard possible, is certainly reasonable in our expectation. So the conditions that you can find on the report try to address a number of those issues that I've tried to highlight so far. And they include our typical standard ones, paying the taxes, having a surveyor doing the drawing, although, Mr. Chairman, I do have to come back with some suggested text to change condition number 1. We would still, even though we're not sure about our long-range plans for 21-2, we still recommend getting a road acquisition agreement for future widening. Again, we've changed the system so the applicant doesn't lose the land, but then we have an agreement on title. If for some reason some future council does decide to extend 21-2, we'll be able to have that land to work with. We recommend that the applicant do one of two things to extend the road of 21-2 to a county standard. One is to put it on the public works list and wait for us to schedule it and come around to build it. Or if that doesn't meet their timing, we can enter into a development agreement for an extension of that road. They would have to build it to a county standard. They would also expect it to be accessing a road construction cost sharing policy, Council Law PW 2-13, which allows county council to allocate 50-50 cost sharing up to a maximum of $10,000. And then all the small project probably won't reach the $20,000 mark. So there's a couple options that you see shaping up in condition number 5, this kind of 5.1, 5.2, to address the road construction issue. Conditions number 6 and 7 address the easement issues, even though they're private facilities. That would still need to be on title. We do have to make sure that that gets passed on to land titles and is registered and doesn't accidentally disappear. And number 8, dealing with, even though they're doing an extension of the road, we would still need to make sure that the approach meets the county standard. That could get wrapped up into the development agreement all as a single package. I mentioned the municipal reserve dedication. In this particular case, would be 10% of a 2-acre parcel, which translates to a cash contribution of around $250. And finally, having the applicant enter into that license to occupy, license of occupation agreement for the features that are already within the county road allowance. So if you followed all that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to field any questions. I did mention that some wording, I'd like an addition to condition number 1 on page, hard copy 45, digital copy 47, 43, I believe. Even though the graphic shows that the intent is to consolidate the 2 acres with the existing area in Lot A, I'd be more comfortable including a line to condition number 1 that reads, the area subdivided from the southeast 10 shall be consolidated with Lot A, Plan 720776.
Mr. Grover.
I will move it, but I want to know where the approach is on this map. So is it north of Dave's house?
No, it was right across from Dave's house. It's straight.
Okay, right onto the road lines.
So if you can see almost halfway through there's a kind of a semicircle.
Yeah.
That's
See where the little land is
there's an
there.
existing road that he's always taken to go back there.
Okay, yeah, because I don't think anything's on the road line there, but it's close.
His garden.
Their main access would be to the north.
Correct. I mean, you can,
Yeah. Because I know that south one, we built it up for machinery access only across the slough. And I wouldn't approve it to go south.
Because this is the road. If you could zoom out, you can see the road. For anybody that's asking, there's no, that's a switchback road further north.
Yeah.
And it's not something I see as, it's basically their private drive for 2.5 miles or whatever.
Yeah. It's a country road.
You betcha. I'm gonna go with Mr. Stevens first, then Mr. Clark.
If we extend this 21-2, is the applicant aware that he may lose his shelter in front of his house to where he wants his approach?
That's I'll tell you what, if anybody knows the area, the 21-2 is probably the least. We got about 600 other roads we gotta fix. Just saying. Mr. Grover, I think tonight.
I've got 200 in my area beside this one, where that one comes up.
Yeah. This is basically.
It just does go to one place, now it'll go to 2.
But it's same family.
Same family.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Just the question I have is, that road north I believe that's north of the top of the screen. We're saying we want this new section of road being built to county spec. Is that one built to county spec? So that's being a little bit,
I would, ultimately, the spec is a decision of the Public Works. We do have a local road standard.
Okay.
I think the closest would be, let's match, my view would be to match physically what's there. And because it is a relatively narrow carriageway, there is a possibility that that shelter belt, the nice line of trees that you see in the road allowance, that may fall outside of the actual physical area where it have to be improved. The question is how much and whether or not it still poses if it's a through road, I'd say there's a possible vehicle collision issue. But again, I'm gonna have to defer to Public Works on the call on that, but I'm hoping that's how we would approach it.
Go ahead.
I hope we're not gonna try to make them build a high road and then.
For 50 feet.
No, and then we're gonna go county road trail out of there.
that was my.
But knowing this individual, that little intersection that he's going to put together there will probably be better than,
Well, we gotta go.
I agree from both parties' names that are listed on there.
yeah, absolutely. Any questions or concerns? So we have one change that we're going to have at the front, that they make sure and consolidate the lot. I'm sure that's going to happen, so I have no questions on that. Any other concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Next. Mr. Grover.
I did.
I think I would love to make that. That's what I think he said. I think that. He doesn't love to make very many motions, but it's.
Well, that one there, but people can change too on it here. That can be owned by someone, I.
Yeah, no, that's what we got taking care of us, making sure
We just wanna make sure it's our county, but we don't want them to build a nice high grade road and, oh, we're into a goat trail.
7.2. Yeah, for 50 meeting.
That's exactly what happened.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. Yeah, you're fine.
I'll just find the page reference. We can actually pull up the subdivision sketch again. We'll speak to
55.
Yeah, so 54 on the hard copy, 52 in the digital, so give a little bit more context. So this application is a lovely road that you see snaking through the quarter section. It is Tower Road. I'm drawing a blank on that, 19-something, 19-1, I believe. And it is basically what severed this quarter section to create the parcel that we're dealing with on the left-hand side in the west and the balance on the right. The pink shows the proposal to split the lands that are west of Tower Road into one largish acreage containing a dwelling, I think one horse barn and a garage and paddocks for a horse, and also an open discharge location, which largely leaves about a 26-acre block of agricultural land to the north. Although whenever we do this, every parcel we create could eventually have a dwelling unit, and the expectation is a dwelling unit will be built, just a matter of when. Exact timing on the parcel to the north. In the meantime, most likely we continue on as agriculture. Split it into two. It is still considered a second parcel out for this entire quarter section. The parcel size that you see for the new lot at 12 and change, almost 13 acres, is somewhat larger than what we would ordinarily like to see for a farmstead removal or a bare parcel. However, given the placement of the dwellings in that awkward narrow shape, running north-south, unless we're creating 2 6-acre parcels, there's really no way to address that. And that also wouldn't give us space for the open discharge, which is located pretty much in the middle, just to the left of the smaller shed that you can see on the air photo. And historically, we anticipate it's been there longer than 1991, which means they'll be able to get a sign off on existing property boundary distances from a safety codes officer, but any new property line, like the one we're creating a lot across the north, to create that one would definitely have to meet the current requirement of a 90-meter setback. So it does have a bit of influence, but they've also overshot the mark and provided enough space to meet that requirement. The municipal reserve calculation in this particular case would be based on the 12.67 acres that is being subdivided. Again, it's not the first parcel out. The environmental reserve dedication, our staff recommendation is to leave it in private hands as part of the parcels and let them manage it from there, as opposed to public land as environmental reserve. The reserve calculation for MR, again, based on 1250 per acre value, the applicants agree to that, and that translates to a set dollar figure that you can see in the condition. The trickier aspect for this particular application is road widening a little bit, and access points. When we look to the north, what you don't get a sense on the air photo is the hummocky nature and the up and down. So we have both a vertical and a horizontal site distance challenge. So right where you see the driveway coming off the elbow of the road for the balance, that is where an existing access gate to get into the north part of the subject parcel is located. That's probably at this stage the applicant's preferred location for an access approach. This section of Tower Road is advisory worn down to 30 kilometers per hour, but it's not a regulatory restriction, which means that you can actually drive faster than 30 kilometers an hour. I think you're taking your life in your hands to do so, but you're probably not going to do much more than 50. So that does temper the kind of sight distance we need. But even in that location with the driveway on the outside of the curve, if you put something on the inside of the curve, they probably do have to do some shaping and literally cut down the embankment to the north to even get an 80-meter distance of sight line to meet our minimum requirement for any access. So that is something that will have to be worked out for an approach application. Fortunately, there's probably, if you go a little further south of that location, the road starts curving again, and the property's on the outside curve. There may be a location there that can be worked with to provide an access. What it means for the applicant is a longer driveway, but they do have some options to work with. So we're comfortable in leaving that in the hands of the approach application at a later date when they pick a location for a house and to be followed up that way. In terms of road widening, Tower Road, even though we've done a fair amount of work on it thus far, the recommendation is still to secure the 5 meters on the west side for future future improvements or ditch improvements. So that is built into the recommended conditions as well. So I think I've covered most of the key issues, Mr. Chairman. The conditions otherwise are relatively standard that we're used to seeing. Bring in a plan from a surveyor, pay up the taxes, confirm with us that the sewage distance is okay from a safety codes officer, provide the road dedication, and provide the municipal reserve cash in lieu. And I did forget the Rural Development Fund contribution. We are treating this as somewhat of a farmstead removal. And what that means is or my mistake, we're treating it more like a bare parcel out as opposed to a farmstead removal. So only taking out the 5 acres, and the remaining bulk, almost 7 acres, would be subject to the $1,000 per acre charge.
Do we want us for the wetland as well? Okay.
Okay, Mr. McKay? I'll move that we approve this with the recommendations from staff.
Any questions, concerns? So I do have a little bit of a concern with this. We have right now, how many, can you tell me on this portion of land, how many acreages do we have on it? We're getting to the point where this road is going to have more houses than some of our subdivision. I just like, where do we go to the point and pull the trigger to have an upgrade on this road? Because we do seem to get a ton of requests. I don't know about Paul and Justin, but it seems like you guys get called on this. We've had a few meetings over this. When do we make that call? Go ahead, Justin.
Yes, there has been substantial work and phone calls regarding this road. And when do we call it, so to speak, when we do upgrades? That's a tricky question, because it wasn't a subdivision. Which was the straw that broke the camel's back here, but once you get to 17 residents and all the traffic involved, it's a substantial amount of traffic.
This is a good chance it turns into 19 residents, right?
But rather than that there when it's on the map here, rather than a road with a river.
I mean, it's a beautiful road to take. Don't get
Oh, yeah, I got one down there too.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
In most cases too, the residents living on there don't want us to do anything.
That's what I'm saying, right?
So
But,
I think-
I mean,
I think it'd be
we are taxed with
When,
safety
when,
issue, right? We've already advisory changed the kilometers down to 30, but if you're driving over and above that, we really can't give you a ticket, right?
with it open to the north, we're allowing traffic through.
Yeah.
So we can't really say how much traffic will be on that road.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Gender. That was my only concern with it.
So do we, so like in the recommendations, are we requesting that along the west side, that we are taking 5 meters plus along the snake trail?
The question is, are we getting the road widening on the west side of the range road? And the recommendation is yes, for the full length.
Yeah. And that's this new rule of we would get a caveat on it, not actually take it, survey it till we.
Road acquisition agreement would be used, yes.
I guess that is the one benefit. Yeah, we have the potential for another residence, but there is sections of this road where we do not have enough road allowance to correct what's there. The embankments are so close and we just don't have the real estate to work with, so.
Can you go back, Andrew, to the map on Appendix A, which is 64 of our, so now, can you overlay the actual road?
I think, Mr. Chair, we'd be better off using the GIS for that because we can.
Okay. Can you overlay what the actual road allowance is, or is that the actual?
The gray is the road allowance over top.
Moving a little bit more.
Oh, so we're relatively, we've surveyed that and went all the way along then.
So, Mr. Chair, that's a little bit misleading. So this may just be the best part, this 800-meter stretch that we're looking at in terms of physically where our road and where the embankments are relative to the surveyed right-of-way, which is from many years ago. It's pre-77 in terms of the road allowance.
Yeah, we should have went on the, Les just said we should go on the backside. Where the road allowance is straight out. Everybody change you got a back alley and a front alley. Okay, well, no use beating this horse to death. We'll move forward. Any questions or concerns other than that? Seeing none, I'll call the questions. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, any new business? Nothing. Any old business? Nothing. In camera? Nothing. Meeting of June the 28th. Any questions? Just one name. Mr. Jackson, I'd say welcome to your first MPC meeting, but you've had a little experience. This time you're sitting on the other side. Well, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything you'd like to say?
Just looking forward to working with MPC, and we've got a couple of great guys to mentor me along the way in place already, so.
Who's that? Well, welcome aboard. Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Grover,
Adjournment, please.
on the 28th of June, we'll be back again. All those in. What's that?
Yeah, we have a hand up.
Oh,
Mr. Chair, just so you know, I'll probably be joining us virtually on the 28th.
okay. All those